Okay, Darksider. So first off, stay with me. I really am going to try and make this as short as possible. But let's talk about Jupiter's Legacy because really there's only two types of reviews I've seen for this. Some that say this thing sucked, and some that think it was just okay. Here's the thing about Jupiter's Legacy. There's some stuff in here that's really, really good. And then there's some stuff in here that's pretty darn bad. It's not a hot mess. It's a warm mess. But this show is definitely serviceable. That's how you say that. And salvageable. Having said all of that, I did not think that this was a bad show. It certainly wasn't terrible. I actually enjoyed it, but with the caveat of saying that there were definitely some problems. But listen to this. Listen. One of the things that's really cool about this show, and at the same time gets this show in trouble, is the examination of these themes, right? I love the different themes that they tackle in this show because I think they're so fascinating to see how a superhero would deal with these themes. The problem is there were too many of these themes for a first season, and you really couldn't do all of them justice, so some of them kind of fell short. Now, the one theme that I thought was really interesting was the whole idea of the code. So the older superheroes, these are the guys that have been protecting the Earth for almost 100 years, have this primary code, and that is under no circumstances do you kill. We do not kill enemies. We arrest them and bring them to justice. Now, if one of us has to die in the process of that happening, then you let that happen. So that is to say, if Al is about to get taken out by the villain, you do not kill that villain to stop him from taking Al out. Listen, I'm asking you, if it ever happens to me, take him out. I want to live. But that is the primary code. No killing whatso have you. So now there's this friction, right, between their children who also have superpowers, who really are being groomed to pick up the mantle of their I forgot the name of them, but they're almost like the Justice League, but they're being groomed to take the place of their parents that have this code, but they're not so sold on the do not kill code, especially now that they're seeing all these different things happen around them. They're seeing all these supervillains kill without remorse, and they're wondering, okay, at what point is it okay for us to start taking each other out? And then we see things kind of tragically unfold in this show as some of the younger heroes are taken out by supervillains that have no qualms about killing them. And they probably could have saved their own lives if they had not been so married to the code, but they allowed themselves to get killed and uphold the code instead of deciding that this is a situation where I have to take a life and I have to do it to either preserve my own or the life of another. I love how they dealt with that theme in this show because I'm sure it's a difficult theme to deal with, a difficult thing to do. You've had your parents, think about this, all your life telling you that this is how things operate. All your life, but you start to see the lay of the land shift, and you start to see that maybe they're thinking, maybe the way that they think things should be is not necessarily the right way to do things. But because you've had a message ingrained in them for so long, it's hard for you to shake it. And this is what these kids are dealing with as they're dealing with the whole aspect of the code about kill or not kill. Is that appropriate for today? I love how they examine that theme. I also love the theme of family because I feel like it's real. You know good and well, Darksiders, if you were Superman or Wonder Woman or Thor or whoever, and you were charged with the responsibility to protect the Earth, and you felt like it was your duty to do so, you know your family's going to suffer because you got to go when they call. What are you going to do? Not go and just let people die? I mean, are you Omni-Man? Because that's what he would do. You got to go. So you know automatically that this is going to have an impact on your family. And I love the way that they tackled this theme in that show as well. And we see the outworkings of this. We see the impact that it has when mom and dad are off saving the world. Their kids are being jammed up, right? They're psychologically jammed. You know what? I told a friend of mine, here's the thing about the family. I'm sharing a little bit of my education with you guys. I'm a counselor by trade. When you have an issue in your family, it cannot be the case that the whole family is not affected. Parents can try and shield it from their kids. It doesn't matter. When you have an issue with your family, the whole unit is affected. And the reason for that is the family is a unit. That old analogy you hear about people saying when you drop a rock in a pond, how it ripples out from the drop point all the way eventually to the edges of the pond, it's the same deal with the family. Anything that happens to one member of the family happens to all of the family because the family's a unit. So it would be the same thing for superheroes. So I love how they tackle that theme here as well. The hardships of not having mom and dad. And you can see how it has taken the two kids on divergent roads. One son who's really pining for his father's acceptance and has really adopted his father's ideology lockstep and barrel. And then another girl who's gone buck wild, out there doing drugs and all kinds of craziness, totally rejects anything that has to do with their parents. And you can see how the impact of them being superheroes has impacted their children and their development. I loved how they examined this theme as well. Now, we get a much stronger connection to this theme with the son and the father, with Utopian and his son, because we see more interaction with them. We see the emotional, right, tug of war between them, and that attaches us to the characters. That attaches us to the son. So we now have this emotional buy-in with the son. The problem is we don't have this emotional buy-in with the daughter. We know that there's friction between the daughter and the father and the mother, but we don't have any of the things that really brought this friction about, besides a few side conversations. But we don't have these kind of intimate scenes of tug and war between the father and the mother and the daughter, outside of a few. So what happens there is you don't get attached to the daughter. You don't care about her. You just see her as some angry girl that's hooked on drugs. And they do a poor job of connecting us, giving us that emotional anchor to the daughter. I think that the reason this happened is because there were so many different themes that they were trying to tackle in the show. They didn't really have enough time to develop that family connection theme. So I'm not going to get into all of the other things, but I do think that one of the things that's really powerful about this show is how they do examine certain themes in the show, and that gives this show a lot of potential moving forward. I love the story. Now, it was a lot going on, and that's fair for people who say that it was too much going on, too many subplots. I get all of that. That's completely fair, because they did. They bit more than they could chew for an 8-episode season 1, and not even all those episodes running a full hour. They tried to put too much into it. But I just think of the elements that they had in Jupiter's Legacy, it has huge potential, man. Because some of the stuff they're examining there, I mean, for this to be what Miller is hoping would be kind of the Millerverse, I think there's a lot of potential to work with here. Now, some of the things that I really didn't like, first thing I got to talk about is the costumes. The costumes look horrific. Now, I've not read the comics. Maybe they are a reflection of exactly what they look like in the comics. And for you, if you've read the comics, you're happy about that, right? Because now you see that live adaptation of the heroes that you've always read about. And a lot of times we'd like to see them as they're represented in the comics. But sometimes, man, you got to make adjustments to some of those costumes, because it's just not going to work. They did that with X-Men. You saw how they brought them out in like the black and like with the gold trim initially. You can't bring the X-Men out with the comic with the costumes from the comic books. How jacked up would that actually look in live action? So sometimes you got to make an adjustment. You just have to make an adjustment. Another issue that I had with this was the makeup. I mean, in some cases, the makeup was horrendous. So I did have problems with that as well. I also had a few problems with the CGI, and the writing sometimes was a little bit off to me as well. But is Jupiter's Legacy terrible? No. So I would say to you, if you haven't seen it, go check it out and decide for yourself. Don't listen to folks who tell you don't waste your time, because that's a mistake, because you might really get into this show and really enjoy it. There is a lot to explore in this show, a lot of interesting themes, and I feel like this first season might actually be a setup, and maybe that's why we got so much packed into these 8 episodes, so that in seasons to come, hopefully Netflix doesn't cancel this, we can really broaden out and start to dig deep into some character development and things like that. And then some of the holes that were in this season, they will fill. Oh man, I almost forgot to share this with you. I did want to know how it was the case that the supervillains got their powers, because from what we see in the show, it appears that the powers originated from all of them going to the island and getting their powers. and we know that their children inherited those powers from them. But how did we get the supervillains? Where did those powers come from? That's never answered in this first season. So I hope that we see that as well in seasons to come. I liked Jupiter's Legacy enough. I think it's good enough to check out. I hope we get a season 2. I think this show has great potential. Make sure you follow me to the next video, and I will also be in the comments for the next hours. Thanks for watching, everybody. Love you, Darksiders. I'll see you. Peace.